Fashion Talks. In this episode, we are joined by Janet Chemitei, slow fashion expert and educator working with the All Foundation in Ghana. Drawing from her work in Kenya and Ghana, Janet shares insights into secondhand clothing imports and the true cost of fast fashion.
So I chose this to call the presentation "Our Clothes Away from Our Closets" because that's literally what secondhand clothes are. Even not only for all of you who are in Germany, but also for me who's in Kenya, because I have access to very cheap clothes that I can spend however money I want on it. But then that doesn't mean just because I am aware that I am buying secondhand clothing that I can be more conscious with how I buy. So I'm also contributing to, as many people are contributing to overconsumption and pollution to our environment just because of how the fashion system works. And so once we buy those clothes and then we dispose of them, whether we donate them or we put them in a trash bag somewhere, we rarely think about what happens. And so this presentation kind of brings that to light. So this question, I don't want you to answer it right now. It can be a reflection question as you do your research and learn more about the fashion industry. Like, I want you to ask yourselves if you think secondhand clothing resellers work in the fashion industry or not. And something to keep in mind is that remember that secondhand clothing is part of fashion's supply chain. And when people think about people who actually work in the fashion industry, retailers or people who even upcycle or repair clothes in informal secondhand markets like Gikomba in Nairobi and Atamanto in Accra, Ghana, they don't really think of them as being part of the fashion industry. But you have to do your own research and see what is the link in the entire supply chain and how do these people contribute to what the fashion industry actually is.
Okay, on the street and I got my swag on. Okay, get the money, gotta get my bag on. Okay, triple back, flip out the whole scene. Okay, all you suckers just don't wanna be me. So
part of what I do as a slow fashion educator is to show the realities of the fashion industry on the ground, and I do this by sharing videos. I go to the secondhand market, I go to the dump site, and then I take videos of textile waste, and then basically I create videos depending on the message that I want to pass across. So sometimes, for example, for Art Day, because the theme, for example, this year was Our Power, Our Planet. And so do we really think about the power that we have as consumers, I would say, to hold these fashion brands accountable, and what kind of choices can we do to make sure that we not only practice conscious consumerism, but at the same time we're holding global brands accountable, because it's not citizens or consumers' problems that we have overproduction. All those things are done by the fashion industry because they want to draw cheap us as consumers. So it's just understanding what role do we play and how can we come together to create change in the fashion industry. This picture is a stall in Gikomba market. So most secondhand markets in Africa are open air markets. So that means it's just like a piece of land, and you'll find raised platforms where people put whatever items that they're selling. Like in this case, is men's shirts, and the prices depends on if the bales were opened on that day or they were opened a few days ago. Because when you open a fresh bale, and you see what a bale is in the next slides. When you open a bale, usually the prices are a bit higher, and then people will take like the most quality stuff, and then what remains is what will be sold for cheaper, because people will not buy the same price for stuff that is not such good quality. This is a picture of Dandora dump site that's in Nairobi as well. Dandora it receives all kinds of waste. It receives textiles, plastics, food waste, medical waste, construction waste, everything, and they all end up in the dump site. And unfortunately, as most of you probably know, is that when textiles already mix with any type of waste, then they really cannot be recycled. So as soon as they end up in the dump site, that's it. No one can do anything about it yet. And we have a textile recycling company in Kenya, but they're not doing that yet. But even though that's their plan, they still can't do anything with textiles that have already been put in the trash and ended up in the landfill. And as Ellen MacArthur Foundation did a research and found out that about 92 million tons of textiles waste is created every year. And think about that. And then Ghana, Kantamanto market, receives 15 million garments every single week in the market. And Ghana has a population of, I've forgotten how much, but it's not that many people. So imagine 15 million garments ending up in Ghana every single week. And that's just 1 week. Imagine how many clothes arrive every year. And who really needs that much clothing, right? And most of it, up to 40% of those clothing that arrive is basically waste. And it's waste because it's either oversized, it's torn, it's stained, and then other things like not being climate appropriate, because Ghana is a very hot country. So some of the things, for example, if a bed is full of items like jackets, like winter jackets or boots, no one is going to wear that. So that just ultimately becomes waste, you know. This is a representation of the journey of how clothes come to be, from when you buy them in Germany, as an example, how many times you wear them, and then you donate it to I think a charity or donation bins all around. And then obviously for a long time, secondhand clothes used to be thought of as coming to Africa or to global south countries to clothe people who could not afford to buy clothes. But that used to be like that in the 80s and the 90s. And then from the early 2000s, everything changed and secondhand clothing became a trade. So you donate those clothes for free, but people spend money to buy these bills and to resell them. So you see it as an act of, you're doing something good, but you're actually not, because most companies that you donate to in Germany do not treat it as an environmental service. Rather, it's being treated as a business. And so after you send them to, let's say if you put them in a donation box, they'll be taken to a global south country like, say, Malaysia or even India, sometimes to Dubai, depending on the country. And in these countries, there are sorting facilities, and these clothes are taken to these countries because they offer cheap labor. So they'll be taken to these countries where they have huge sorting facilities, and then the clothes will be sorted into different categories. So like grade A, as an example, will be like really good quality, and then B is like, the next level, like that. And then from there, the bills they're packaged into like 45 to 75 kg bills, and then they're wrapped and strapped with plastic strings. And then they will be sent to these African countries, mostly, who will buy the bills. And the bills cost between $200 to $700. You can try convert that to euros and see how much money that is. And as I said, at least 40% of the clothes that come cannot be sold. So imagine how much money these retailers have to make even half of the money that they used to spend on the bills. And unfortunately, most of these retailers do not have money of their own to buy these bills, so to support their businesses. And some of them have been selling secondhand for as long as 30 years, 20 years, 10 years. So they have to borrow money. In most African countries, we have these things called samples, where an individual or a business can borrow money from them. So you borrow money to finance your business so you can buy these bills. And then when you make money, you give the money you've made back into the circle. But then because the quality of the clothes have been declining over the years, so they're not making as much money as they used to anymore. So that means the retailers are getting into more and more debt, and there's no one that's going to save them. And then after the bales arrive in the market and they're sold, and then some of them unfortunately do end up as waste. Some people, you find some people in the market trying to buy the textile waste, or rather the clothes that cannot be sold, and then they will upcycle them into something else. Some will recycle, but yeah, unfortunately, just up to 40% of them do end up as waste. And the same case as Kenya as well. This research is from 2023, and they found out that at least 30 to 40% of the bales that come into Kenya is unsellable, which means it's just going to end up as waste. And you already know the impact that fashion has. A lot of the clothes that we wear right now is fast fashion. So that means it's full of synthetic fibers like polyester, nylon, acrylic. And when you wash these things, they release microfibers. And both Gikomba Market sits right next to Nairobi River, which is a river source. And so when these clothes, this picture here, it's right by the riverbank, and when these clothes mix with the water, so you immediately know that it's going to release microfibers, and then this water will go downstream, and it's what will be used to water plants. People will eat that food. That people, I think, fish even, but not everywhere along the river. And then in Ghana, Katomato Market is next to a lagoon. Is it a lagoon? Yes, next to a lagoon. So there's a canal, and then the canal feeds into the lagoon, and then the lagoon feeds into the ocean. So it sweeps all the textile and the plastic waste into it. So both markets employ a lot of people, from retailers, upcyclers, tailors, to people who work in the food industry. Because for an area or a community to be an ecosystem, that it includes all types of businesses. And as an ecosystem, everyone depends on each other. So if a retailer comes to work, or a tailor, like this is Esther, when a retailer comes into, or a tailor in the market, obviously at some point they would need to use the toilet, they would need to eat food. So all these numbers represents different services that make up Komba and Kathmandu ecosystem. So this is how a bale looks like, and this is like a store, and it's an importer's store. So there's a big distinction between an importer and a retailer. An importer is someone who imports like a container full of these bales, and so they're the ones who, will get all the money. Like when, say, if I am a retailer, I go into a store and then I buy these bales from them, which range between $200 to $700. So this importer does not feel the pinch if the quality of the clothes is not good, because he doesn't open the bale. His work is just to sell it to the retailer, and the retailer will go into the market, open the bale, and then when they open the bale is when they see, okay, this is the type of clothes I have, this is good quality and this is bad quality. How do I sell this to at least get close to the amount of money I paid the bale for? So when we say that the retailers in the market are the ones who actually pay the price for how expensive the clothes are, and they're not getting the return, is because they're the ones who open the bills. It's their money that's going to be used up, while the store owner, their job is just to distribute. They don't care if you're going to make profit out of your bill or not. Like, that's not their problem at all. And then, when I was in Ghana last year, between October and November, I came to Ghana to do a residency with the O Foundation. And one of the campaigns is called the Speak Volumes campaign. And it's an important campaign because it shows the disparity of the fashion industry, where they don't disclose how many clothes they produce every year. yet we know how many clothes end up in an African country, as an example. Like Ghana knows how many clothes per week it receives, but the fashion industry, like each brand, the brands that we get, think about the famous brands that you wear, Zara, H&M, Shein, they don't disclose how many clothes they produce. If we knew how many clothes were produced, then we would be able to find better alternatives, carefully recycle and reuse these clothes so that they don't end up in the landfill. And if we knew the quantity, so they say it's between 80 to 150 billion, but nobody really wants to know. And as you know, fast fashion relies on trends and cheap things. So all they care about is money, and they really wouldn't want to disclose how much they're producing. And so part of the advocacy in this space of education and advocacy in fashion is to know how many clothes we have, so that we can have better structures to put these clothes in circulation for a longer time. And also, it would be easier also to see how can we structure like the globally accountable APR and where the money would go. But then without the numbers, it's really hard. While apart from asking the big brands from also sharing how much clothes they produce, we also ask the much smaller brands, including slow and sustainable fashion brands, because we think, when these brands lead by example and people see that it's actually really important for us to know how many clothes we produce, then probably maybe global fashion would be like, oh, we also want to show that we actually care, and that will drive them into disclosing how much clothes they produce. I put that quote because most of the time when you ask someone what they're wearing, or what their style is, they will say that they use fashion as a way to express themselves. But then we should also know that as much as we're using clothes to express ourselves, we're also driving waste. So if you want to learn more about what a globally accountable extended producer responsibility is, please go to the O Foundation website, and under the waste colonialism part, you will get more information. Just to touch a little bit about why I do content and storytelling, it's because when you tap into what people are doing, for example, most of the content I do, I pick up on the trends that are happening on Instagram and TikTok, and then I talk about textile waste and how we consume fashion. Because again, we wear clothes every day, and that's one of the things that people across the world share. So how do we make this conversation more mainstream and for people to actually rethink about the clothes that they're wearing? So that's why for me, storytelling is really important. And apart from storytelling, collaboration as well. Because if I continue doing this work by myself in Kenya, and I don't collaborate with anyone else in Kenya, or now that I'm in Ghana, if I don't collaborate with other people, even like with Charlotte and Ramona, then that will mean that the education purpose of it will be lost, because I just want to keep it around myself. But the more you collaborate with other people and share what you're doing, then the message spreads across, and then people start to see, oh, this is how my habit is impacting someone else that's in a different area. And so it taps into your mind, and you're able to see how else can you change yourself. And I know most of us are worried about how, as an individual, you can't really do much, but change sometimes comes through a butterfly effect, a ripple effect. So you have to do it for someone else to see it, and then it spreads across. So don't think that as an individual you have no power at all. You actually do. So these are just screen grabs of some of the videos I share. I also use common environmental days to talk about fashion, because I genuinely just want clothes to be in our everyday conversation, but in the sense that that there's a garment worker problem, that there's a waste problem, that the global fashion industry is contributing to a lot of issues not just looking good all the time and wanting to spend money and look good in events and whatnot. And apart from sharing videos on Instagram and doing those storytelling practices, some of the things I ask people to do is be conscious of how you buy. If you have time, you can repair yourself, or if not, you can always take them to a tailor, attend shopping events, buy secondhand when you can, and buy from responsible businesses. And if you have an opportunity to call out big fashion, then do it. Yeah, these are my two friends, Joyce and Solomon. I work with them all the time when I go to the Dam site. We do textile waste trips a lot, so it could be a journalist, could be research students, brands. They want to learn about how the dump site ecosystem, what types of waste end there, and whatnot, and who works there, because waste pickers are people that we don't really think about. So working with them has been really important because they help me to connect the dots of everyone who works in the supply chain. And waste pickers are really important because they're the ones that connect this waste, even textiles, and then put them back into the circulation system. We will have time to talk about them a little later, but also learn about what waste pickers do. And maybe I can just add, in Kantamanto Market, as a wrap up, the O Foundation, one of the communities that the O Foundation supports and works with, they're called Kanta Keepers, Kanta Hope, Kantamanto, and it's basically a collective of waste pickers that collect plastic and textile waste from the market every single day. Mm-hmm. So the market here closes at 6 p.m. And so they ask the retailers, because obviously there's going to be waste in the bills. So they ask the retailers for the clothes that they will not be reselling to put them on one side. And then the counter keepers will come at 6 p.m., sweep the market, and then put the waste in bags. And then 2 times in a week. So every Wednesday and Saturday is a market day. So the O Foundation now has a truck, and they also work in collaboration with the Ghanaian government. So they will come to the market at 6 p.m. and then the counter keepers will load this trash bags into the truck, and then they'll be driven into the landfill. I mean, unfortunately, again, there's just too much waste, and there's not much that we can do, so they do have to end up in the landfill. But it's people like this, the waste pickers, that are really important, and we need to know what role they play in making sure that our environment is clean and that we keep on advancing like a better fashion system. Thank you.